Right, so let's use this part for a YouTube segment. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alexander, also known as Andreyevich, and today I'm going to be talking about, I think, like, three most common things that that people are not saying, but that people are actually considering or heard of when they are talking about Diablo 2 Resurrected. Those things are, let's start with the first one, stereotypes, I can call it like this. First stereotype is that, oh, this game is very hard, this game is like insanely challenging to understand and comprehend, and this game requires extensive guide for you to actually be able to finish it from the beginning until the end. Without it, you're going to struggle a lot, you won't understand the mechanics, and so on and so forth. It's hard to play certain characters and much more things related to it. From my point of view, this is a total garbage. Like, this is nonsense and not true at all. I disagree with people who think this way, especially if people came into if people are coming or came into Diablo 2 Resurrected from more modern action RPG games, a la Grim Dawn, Path of Exile, Last Epoch. Those games are much more flourished in terms of the much more like extended and flourished in terms of the mechanics, in terms of what stuff you can do. They have much like the room for error there is much less in comparison to Diablo 2, even for normal difficulty. And if you screw up your character for on normal difficulty, you most likely will start over. It's not to say that Diablo 2 Resurrected doesn't have the same thing, but when it comes to figuring out like build archetype and what do you want to play with and what's the synergy, it's pretty easy to understand in Diablo 2, like I've said, in comparison to those games that I just mentioned. Why is that the case? Because like, you take a look at the primary example of this, like for instance, I want to play as a sorceress at the beginning. Let's say I want to focus on skill that has like AoE. What if I try Fireball? Okay, it doesn't have AoE. What if I try Fireball? It does have AoE. So I'm going to max it out, and after this I will say, like, it says receives damage bonuses from. Well, this means it's a synergy. It's easy to understand that if I put points into Meteor, if I put points into Firebolt and into Fire Mastery, my damage will be through the roof for normal difficulty standards, and I can easily beat normal difficulty with it. And I would say, like, even most part of the Nightmare difficulty too, if you decide to stick to it. So yeah, like, you certainly have skills that are, you can say it, like beginner traps. Like, you might think, oh, Inferno, I have heard and I have experienced it on myself that Shamans in Act 3 are going to deal insane damage to me. What if I tried to do it myself? And then you realize the skill's not that great. Likewise with the Blaze, but generally speaking, it's easy to understand like what skills are good, what skills are bad, and you don't have to spend as much time in comparison to Grim Dawn or like PoE or Last Epoch to figure out like your skill allocation process, what synergies comes first, what synergies comes next, and so on and so forth. Same thing I can say about like, from my point of view, that's one of the most common stereotypes. And if a person, like, I understand if a person never played action RPG at all, but if he or she has experience in PoE, Last Epoch, Grim Dawn, or hell, even games prior to that, like Torchlight, Titan Quest, or something else, you won't have that much of a problem in Diablo 2 Resurrected to figure out like what works and what not. Like, it's not going to be insanely hard, not on the same level as PoE, even without a guide. Like, you are capable of beating it from the beginning until the end without having that much of an issue. Which quickly moves me to the second point. Like, I've promised that I'm going to be talking about like three most common stereotypes about this game. The second most common stereotype about this game is that melee classes are going to be as powerful or even more powerful than range / casters. They just need base gear, and that's all. I don't know, honestly. I don't understand, and I don't support, and I disagree with those who think this way. Melee classes in this game, unless you take into account specific instances of having the advantage over ranged classes, ranged archetype in general, like uber bosses, or god forbid PvP, like don't even start talking about this, or certain mechanics that allows them to come out on top, like find item that barbarian has and no other classes have. For the most part, this game is all about farming, and farming quickly and like as effectively as possible by killing fast quantities of monster in the shortest period of time. And, ladies and gentlemen, casters don't have huge diminishing return, or any diminishing return at all, for that matter. If it would have been in another game where you level up a caster, it's easy at the beginning, but it gets harder and harder until the end, and at the end, without beast gear, you will be weak as hell as a caster, but melee it's vice versa, then I would have agreed to that. But in Diablo 2, the situation is so that casters, once they get more powerful, they will still become even stronger and stronger, especially with beast gear, a la I get my Griffins, Infinity Spec into Lightning Element, annihilate everyone and everything. Good examples of that would be like Lightning Sork, Lightning Javazon, and especially Hammer Paladin, already not with lightning damage but with magic damage. You think those classes are struggling a lot? They are capable of farming way faster any area of, like pretty much any area of this game in a quick succession in comparison to melee classes. Yes, you can want to hit certain elites if you have beast gear on melee characters. That's without a doubt, but you won't cover as much range, that's first and foremost, in comparison to range classes, casters in general. And secondly, the time it takes you to do, like, some people are saying, so what if I like waste not like 20 seconds, what if I waste like 40 or 50 seconds or even a minute, like what's that big of a deal? The difference is not only with one run. In this game you're doing hundreds, even thousands of runs, so this difference of 30 to 40 seconds up to a minute quickly becomes exponentially higher and higher in time. You will start to spend more and more time on those melee characters when you are doing your farming sessions, whereas somebody who is going to be using a caster are going to much quicker get to his power spike, to his more powerful items, and he will become much stronger than you. He'll get his twin gear, he'll get his alt character's gear, his main character quicker than you. Unless you just enjoy, like, enjoyment aside, or like aesthetics aside, if you're gonna talk about pure effectiveness, and if you exclude uber bosses and PvP, just farming certain zones, casters are always the meta class. They have, I think if I have not played in vanilla Diablo 2, but at least in the latest patches of Lord of Destruction and Diablo 2 Resurrected and certain mods, casters have been and always will be the predominant choice, the most easy, easiest classes that you can gravitate to and farm with them items that you need quickly and effectively before you're going to gear up your other characters, unlike melee characters. Like, melee characters are suffering badly in this game, like when it comes to leveling and when it comes to just regular farming. They need tons of items, and even after having tons of items, they cannot compete with casters, like I said, unless you take into account uber bosses and PvP. So that's that. So this misconception that my barbarian like Zeal Paladin or like assassin, melee assassin, or Werebear Druid or Werewolf Druid are going to be just as equal as like Beast Gear Lightning Javazon, Lightning Sork, or Lightning Hammerdin, thrown out of the window. It's illogical, it's nonsense, it's never going to happen if we're talking about just regular farming. And final thing that I want to talk about for today, for this like YouTube segment, it's this stereotype once again that this game is unbeatable for certain classes if you don't maximize your resistances. Like if you not keep your resistances in check when it comes to fire, cold, lightning, and poison, being at 75% or even higher, you're going to have like a very hard time, or you will not going to be able to beat this game, like the campaign. I'm not talking about farming or doing like more challenging content. You will not be able to beat the campaign of this game. This, I would say, is the stereotype is only partially true, and it's applicable to, I think it's mostly applicable once again to melee classes, because they are having a hard time to avoid getting hit by monsters. And it's partially applicable to certain casters, because certain casters are fighting enemies at close range, like Tornado Druid. So for him, having high resistances is more important than for others. But I would say the ones that I would say it's not true, the stereotype is untrue at all if you are fighting from mid or long range, a la Lightning Trap Assassin, any kind of Sorceress, like Bone Necromancer especially, or Poison Necromancer. Yes, I will not going to deny that your resistances matters, and they will for sure mitigate the incoming damage. But if you are good at kiting, I'm not saying like MLG expert, you know, insane reflexes. If you are decent at kiting, if you know what you're fighting, if you know like if you know from where the shot is being fired, if you can dodge it, you will not have like a hard time. Even my brother, when he played like a Boazon, he have negative resistance for his Boazon for the most part. He was able to get through normal to hell difficulty without that much of an issue. Yes, he died here and there, but that's not necessarily because he couldn't dodge the attack. That's mostly because the damage of Boazon freaking atrocious. Like it's bad, and he like instead of spending time on like killing enemies faster and dodge those incoming attacks, he spent more time of trying to constantly fire his shots non-stop, like Fire Arrow and Ice Arrow, and he gets blown up for it. That's totally different story. Like I've said, for the most mid-range and long-range casters, it's not that much of an issue whatsoever to beat this game, even if you don't have capped or overcapped resistances. It's not Grim Dawn, it's not Less Teapot, where in those games, even on normal difficulty, yes, there's also like 3 difficulty. Those games are also include some difficulty scale, and in those games, if you don't have good resistances, even at the beginning, like on normal difficulty, you'll get deleted. You'll pretty much get deleted by the earliest monsters. In Diablo 2, not the case whatsoever. On normal and for the most part Nightmare difficulty, you can bypass the game even with having some resistances at lower margin, and same thing for Hell difficulty. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, and especially depends on the enemy variety, but it's not impossible. And like I've said, you don't need to be an expert for it. So don't get too obsessed with, oh, I don't have everything maxed out when it comes to my defense, what should I do, how should I improve it. I get it if you are if you are the type of person that face tanks everything, even when you are playing as a caster. That's totally different story. But if you are dodging from time to time, like let's say you are firing shot over there, and when the shot is being fired, you are just running in circles, or you are just doing like those some mini steps to dodge the incoming attack, or teleporting if you're a sorceress away from the incoming threat, it won't going to be that much of an issue for you to complete this game. Yes, your Merc will die, or maybe you get surrounded from time to time, but don't stress it too much when it comes to your resistances if you're playing mid or long-range caster. If you're playing a melee, that's totally different story, but on those archetypes, like I already talked about it, like they are suffering a lot in Diablo 2, like they require insane investments, and they're not as good as ranged. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is it when it comes to 3 most common stereotypes. Once again, those were this game as hard as hell, I cannot comprehend it, I will not be able to play through it without a guide. That's the first one. The second one, melee, is that I covered. Melee classes is going to be just as powerful as range classes. They just need to have best in slot gear. And the third one, I have the third one that I covered is that this game is unbeatable if you don't have capped or overcapped resistances, especially on hell difficulty. Right, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you like this segment that I will dedicate for a YouTube video. If you did, please make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and turn the post notification bell on so that you won't miss out any of the future videos, and of course leave a comment on what do you think about those 3 stereotypes that I have covered. From my point of view, I am done, and my name is Alexander Ostan Sergeyevich. I will see you in the next videos. Peace.